Oh, the old ones aren't enough for you? You don't want to hear about 096 for the umpteenth time? Well, fine, have it your way. I'll bring you the freshest of the fresh SCP monsters. The newest and rawest and possibly least long lasting. Because today I'm hopping on the SCP-Wiki and picking out the literal newest monsters I can find. I went right to the new articles section and looked for anomalies that could be classified as monsters. Some I had to cut because they're a little weak and were getting downvoted, but these seem like they're well on their way to stardom, or at least on their way to a permanent spot in a Foundation holding cell. So sit back, relax, and let the newness wash over you. Someday you'll be able to say you knew these ones before they were cool, and really, what's better than that? Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to take a look at the top 5 newest SCP Monsters 2020. Keep in mind these are the newest as of the time of writing, so take that as you will. If SCPs make you want to sing, make sure you give our top 5 scary SCP playlist a try. It's over here. Wicked. Let's get going. Coming in at number 5, we've got SCP-5516. You like lobster? Well, if you're not allergic, you're not alone. But these lobsters are different. They're anomalous, and they seem to be able to replicate themselves almost instantly in order to keep their numbers stable. An experienced lobster researcher was brought into the Foundation to study these, but quickly learned too much. The Foundation couldn't abide by that and reassigned the doctor. Couldn't let them learn all that extra stuff, I suppose. See, it seems as though these special lobsters have some interesting properties. They cap their population at 101, and as soon as one dies, another one spontaneously takes its place. They all seem to share some sort of hive mind as well, acting simultaneously and perfectly dividing food between themselves. Distress rises in a lobster separated from its cohort, but they're particularly good at getting back to where they came from. Hell, they're even good at solving puzzles and making it through rudimentary blockades. They can unlock some doors even. All in all, instances of 5516 just seem to be particularly intelligent sea creatures. But if that were the case, why did the Foundation relocate the doctor? And why were they being so secretive? One might think that's just how the Foundation operates, but an addendum elucidates the situation a little more. It appears as though the Foundation was working on some new amnestics and testing them on lobsters to see if they could break from their group. No dice. But the doctor in charge seems to be adversely affected by it. So maybe the lobsters themselves aren't so bad, even if they are anomalous. Maybe the real monster is once again the Foundation. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-3195. How tall is a human usually? 5-6 feet? Well, this humanoid is 9 meters tall, and that's just the beginning of the oddities associated with 3195. It was originally discovered after landing in the Atlantic, seemingly originating from the rings of Saturn. After traveling through space for 9 years, it touched down and was picked up by the Foundation. At one point, 3195 might have been undamaged, but since entering Earth's atmosphere, it sustained all sorts of injuries. 60% of its body is covered in third-degree burns. All sorts of skin is missing. Some limbs are destroyed or simply aren't there. And instead of a heart, there's a big hole. Some days we all feel like that now, don't we? To make matters worse for this humanoid, all of the wounds are consistently bleeding and don't respond well to attempted first aid. All attempts to heal the injuries have failed, unfortunately, but it hasn't succumbed to them yet. After some interviews with the anomaly, it appears as though they won't be healing anytime soon either. There's a funny backstory to 3195, and it really isn't the monster. In fact, its mother is. I'm sure some folks can relate. The 9-meter lad had once been a star athlete, pressured to continue training by his mother, but all he wanted to do was create art in the stars. In fact, that's pretty much all he's been doing since landing on Earth. By waving his hands around towards the sky, all sorts of strictly visual nebula are formed. It really is quite dazzling. However, this is perceived as a waste of time by 3195's mother, who now knows he's injured and stuck on Earth. Now that he can't run, she's sort of given up on him, left him to die on our sweet blue planet. Tragic, right? But now you see why the anomaly isn't the monster, and instead it's the mother of the anomaly. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-5705. Keep an eye on your batteries, alright? Not just for leaks and charge levels, but just in case they're housing something other than battery acid. Take 5705 for example. On the outside it appears to be a 9-volt battery with a handwritten label that reads "Mighty Batteries, powered by thorium." No radioactive activity usually associated with thorium decay though. Plus, it's nigh indestructible. From time to time, the battery will exhibit some odd behavior that folks at the Foundation refer to as a discharge event. This seems to show that there's an entity trapped within the battery who enters an agitated state from time to time. During these events, if the battery is hooked up to a device with a screen, all sorts of almost illegible text will appear on the display. After reading through some of these messages, I have come to the conclusion that there may or may not be a certain Norse god trapped inside, thanks to the hijinks of a certain trickster brother. That's just my interpretation though. There are some mentions of reduced reducing things to dust, lifting great serpents, and swinging hammers. You might not consider said deity a monster, but I don't want to know what kind of mayhem will ensue when he escapes the battery, and I'm not going to stick around to find out. In the meantime, keep your flashlights shining strong with thorium. Trademark. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-5147. Uh-oh, mannequins. If you want something to be at least 50% creepier, add some awful faceless mannequin people. Or, add some faces to them and just make sure that they're terrible faces. These ones are particularly interesting though, if you can stand to be near them for a little while. They're all part of what they call the Mannequin Troupe, a set of 41 mannequins, each with a unique skill set. They understand verbal requests and will do their best to fulfill what people ask of them. However, if the request is immoral or impossible, they'll just return to chilling as a mannequin. Not bad. Some of the different skills include cooking, identifying causes of death, building houses, performing vocal arias, putting out fires, and more. In fact, most of the skills they have are quite lovely. None can really be perceived as monstrous. The mannequins are immortal though, and any deadly damage inflicted to them will be healed up within 3 days, and then the mannequin returns to regular working order. So maybe they're not so bad after all. The thing is, they're creepy mannequins that move on their own and they have no face. Regardless of helpfulness and even documented gift giving, I just don't know if I can trust them. The uncanny valley rules my brain. Sorry, troop. And finally at number 1, we've got SCP-5494. The Great Lakes are known for a multitude of reasons, but not often referred to for their monster population. Well, that ends today. There are all sorts of chimera-type beasts living at the bottoms of Lake Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. I bet you that makes you rethink your next vacation, huh? Get this. They're feline in shape, they have fish scales, horns like a bull, quills, feathers, and a copper serpent's tail. When I said chimera, I meant it. The exact number of 5494 instances in the lakes is impossible to ascertain, as they're excellent at camouflaging as well as disrupting any attempts to record them. And they eat the hell out of people too. When a Foundation research team tossed a deer into a lake to see if one would come up to eat, the research team was the thing that ended up being consumed. Mobile task forces have attempted to fight with these beasts as well, with similar results. The Foundation began consultation on native reservations in the area and found out all sorts of things about the anomalies. They appeared to be Manitou, or spirit, creatures known as the Mishipeshu. These creatures hold the copper deposits in the lakes sacred and are quite powerful. On assorted advice from different indigenous communities, the Foundation attempted to perform further research on 5494. All of these experiments resulted in the consumption of Foundation personnel. Following some internal reorganization and plenty of thought, it was decided that maybe it wasn't the Foundation's place to attempt to contain these creatures. In the end, it was left up to the indigenous communities who had known about and coexisted with the creatures for centuries to decide what to do. The creatures are still out there, trawling the bottom of the lakes, but the Foundation is leaving them well enough alone. Probably for the best. I wonder if any of these will last. That's the thing about the SCP-Wiki. If an entry isn't quite up to snuff, it may end up getting removed from the site. But if the writing is strong, edits can be made and monsters can stick around for quite a while. So, what'd you think? Are these all quality additions into the SCP universe? Will they make it to the halls of eternity? Or will they be replaced by something bigger and scarier? What's your favorite new SCP? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more persnickety ones from the top 5 shameless horror movie ripoffs. Jim Fleming says, Orca, terrible movie, great cast. Richard Harris, Charlotte Rampling, Bo Derek, Keenan Wynn, Robert Carradine, and Will Sampson. I mean, I never said it was terrible, did I? I just said it was a ripoff. But hey, all horror is good in my book. Fool says, now imagine a ripoff horror movie trying to build a cinematic universe. That honestly sounds like a blast. There could be all sorts of half-assed crossovers and lazy plot devices to bring stuff together. Hold on. Nick Lipscomb says, as a former Blockbuster employee, yes, every one of these were cringeworthy. A fine example, Transmorphers. I groaned audibly. Wouldn't it be great to be the producer who gets to greenlight stuff like that? Imagine the power. Tam Sin says, Orca is actually based on a book. Well, so is Jaws, which was published in 1974. And Orca? That was a 76 novel. My point still stands. And Jack the Ripper says, basically every horror movie is a reskin with the same elements, lol. They're all ripoffs. Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun. Every story has already been told. You just have to find an interesting way to tell it again. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I enter the New York sewers without the mandatory sacrificial pizza, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more shrink-wrapped stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. One might think that's just how the Foundation operates, but an addendum elucidates. You might not consider said deity a monster, but I don't want to know. You might not I'm gonna sneeze. Wow. If I had a soul, it would have left my body.